Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is brought to you in part by our Patreon page at patreon.com/Gear Network. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Gear Network, GERE Network. While you don't have to do this, if you would like to support us, that is a very easy way to do it. For as little as $2 a month, you can get this podcast as well as all others completely commercial free, as well as exclusive content like Patreon-only podcasts, videocasts, and blogs that are not regularly available on GearNetwork.com or any RSS feed. Your support helps us continue to keep up with upgrades to software, purchase professional equipment, and assist us with production costs. Again, patreon.com/Gear Network. Do it right now for as little as $2 a month.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
Look, you want the truth? Okay, then listen in. My first link.
This is the Listen In Podcast with your hosts, John Cimino and Brandon Gorell, here on the Gear Radio Network.
Hello, everyone. We are here. The Listen In Podcast videocast is on the air or on your podcast feed, whatever. We are here. Thank you for joining us. My name is John Cimino at IamJCMoney on Twitter, joined, of course, right here by my eyesore, Mr. Brandon Gorell. Brandon, say hello.
Hey, I actually get to be your eyesore because I am like right in your fucking eyes.
You are right in my eyes.
Normally it's like, you know, we're doing this like through video or like through like Uber conference. There's no pictures.
Just audio.
It's just audio, and I'm still your eyesore there. But now I'm like legit your eyesore.
You are legit. Yes, but you know, it's because damn coronavirus, COVID-19. We can't get face to face in the studio. You can't come to Studio A. I can't go there to Studio B. I mean, you can. It's probably not, you know, the best idea, or shouldn't be broadcasting.
You can go to Studio B and you can work out in the basement, but that's as far as the contact goes. Yeah, pretty much. So 6 foot distance.
6 foot distance, social distancing, and anyways. But we are here. We are glad that you are, whether you're watching us on the premiere, on the Listen In Podcast page, or the Gear Network Facebook page, or the Gear Network YouTube page, or if you've listened a few days prior on there. We are happy that you are here. On today's show, it's going to be, I say it's going to be a relatively quick one, but we typically just kind of go off the rails at times. I wanted to talk to you, Brandon, specifically because I am wearing a football jersey specifically because I want to talk about the draft. Now, last we convened, we had the draft. It was going on in the background, and there was two moments specifically in the draft. One was a funny one, and one was a shocking one.
Yeah.
The funny moment was when the draft pick, when the Jets made their pick of Becton, and I had no earthly idea who the hell he was.
And then you were like, "We're signing out."
Right. And then during that commercial break, I realized who he was, and I was happy again. So
yeah, we saw that video of him throwing that defensive linemen just like with one hand, like get out of here, you piece of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And then pushing a fucking truck.
Well, by the time we came back, the Packers were on the clock, and the Packers, with the 26th pick in the first round, selected quarterback Jordan Love.
Yeah.
And we were both a little kind of thrown. I know I was very much thrown off, and you were trying your best to kind of be like, well, okay, you know, kind of glass half full, glass half empty kind of thing. But I could tell there was a little bit of a puzzled look in your eyes with that. And then as the draft progressed over the next few days, they grabbed A.J. Dillon in the second round, the running back. And then they addressed some other needs, but in a very wide receiver heavy draft, they did not draft a wide receiver. They got a tight end, but they did not get a wide receiver. And all the talk since that point has been about Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur and the GM and how bad the Packers, you know, how bad the Packers draft was, and how they've offered Aaron Rodgers no help for the next few years, that they could probably get good production out of him. And I've heard all this talk, and I don't necessarily disagree with some of the points that are made. But Brandon, you are the resident Packer fan, so I am entitling this Brandon's Brandon's corner. Brandon's corner. There we go. We can call it Brandon's corner. So I need you, Brandon, as the resident Packers fan, to address the people out there, whether they're on the football and other lesser sports board or the sports analyst boards, whether they're friends we know, whether they're people, Gear Network listeners that know you as the jackwagon that picks the Packers to go to the Super Bowl every year when we do our Super Bowl predictions. Help us understand from a Packers fan's perspective why this draft was either really, really good or at the very least not as bad as it's being sold as.
So a number of things. So the first point is we're going to go to Jordan Love. Here's the reason, and I believe it was the smart pick. The Packers had 5 wide receivers on their board that were impact guys who can come in and be a solid number 2 on day 1 and possibly even become a number 1 or a 1A with Adams over there. Those 5 guys were gone. Number 6 on the list was also gone when the Raiders took a guy who was projected to go in the second round as their pick, their second pick in the first round. So when they got there, they had the moment where, you know what? We've scouted this guy. We've watched the tape. We've heard the scouting reports. And there has been some good scouting reports out there, including ones where, like, he had no help his final year that he was at Utah State. And he's probably the only quarterback in this draft, or maybe any draft, who is actually going to be throwing into a bigger window in the NFL than he did in college, because that's how bad his receivers were. He's like, but this guy makes everything look effortless. His throws are effortless. His motion is easy. He makes all the throws. The only thing he needs to work on is his decision making. And that can be taught. You can't teach someone to have arm strength. You can't teach someone to have the best release. You can't teach somebody to be able to keep plays alive and then scramble and make plays. You cannot teach those things. Those things are intangibles. You either have it or you don't. The other stuff you can be coached on. And he can be coached on. And they grabbed him because they see him as a future starting quarterback for that team for many years to come, especially since they don't need him to be the man right now. If he were to go into a situation where he has to be the man, he may not be ready for that. And then you say, okay, we'll draft him later. But I think that the reason that they traded up from 30 to 26 to get him is because they saw Tennessee up there and they saw that Tennessee may be looking for a quarterback. Because Brian Tannehill's there, nice story, but he's not gonna blow anybody's doors off. Mm-hmm. He's a decent quarterback at best. So if you're the Packers and you think, okay, our guy's going to be 38 this season. He has an injury history, not only with just his shoulders, but knees, foot, ankle, shin, and concussions. If you pass on this guy, you may not get another opportunity for the next 2, 3, 4 drafts. And if Rodgers has to sit, look what's happened to us every year when Rodgers gets hurt. We go in the shit tank because we have no viable backup. Now, we had a viable backup one time, and it was Matt Flynn.
Okay, but let me ask this: is it because of the quarterbacks, or is it because of the fact that Green Bay historically has not really surrounded Rodgers with the weapons?
That's bullshit. That was going to be my next point. No, that was going to be my next point.
Because I've seen the stats, and I've seen things thrown out there, and you've seen.
Don't want to hear.
I'm sure you have as well.
I have, and I don't care about how many touchdowns he's thrown to a first-round pick.
That's where I was going with
I don't want to hear about that.
This is why I told you get me right away when we did the happy hour
team.
We did the happy hour podcast.
That was 13-0 and lighting the fucking league on fire. 2 years after they won the Super Bowl, they looked like they were going to go undefeated. They lost that game to the Chiefs. Rested a final game, went 14-2 that season. Lost in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Okay? Aaron Rodgers, for a good solid 6 years, had a run game, a top offensive line, 3 wide receivers who can who can be number 1s or 2s on just about any roster. They had Jordy Nelson after Greg Jennings left. Okay? When they won the Super Bowl, their starting wide receivers were Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, Donald Driver. Okay? Then Driver retires after winning the Super Bowl. Okay? So now it's Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, James Jones. Greg Jennings leaves. Packers drafted Davante Adams in the second round. So then Adams has a tougher first year, but comes into his own the second year. Adams, Nelson, Cobb. Okay? We've had running backs that were good. We've had Eddie Lacy just running people over for a couple of seasons. They've scored a shit ton of points. And all the time, it was the same excuse. The Packers' defense is dog shit. The Packers will score 35, 38 points in a game and lose 42-38. Okay? And that was happening in the playoffs. You remember that game against the Cardinals, that wild card game?
Yes.
Where they were back and forth, him and Warner.
How could I forget?
Yeah.
You were in my basement.
No, that's the second one.
Oh,
the second one I was in your basement.
You're not talking about the play.
I'm talking about the first one when he went up against Kurt Warner.
Oh yeah. Okay, I watched that one. I watched that one
when he got face masked and fumbled.
Yes, I watched that one at my old place of employment. That was the year after they won the Super Bowl, correct?
That was the year before they won the Super Bowl.
It was the year before.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have the game against the Cardinals where Aaron Rodgers puts on a show, throws the Hail Mary, gets them to go to overtime. That's the one I watched at your house.
Mm-hmm.
They lose because in overtime, they never got the ball.
Right, the stupid overtime rule.
The touchdown. Same thing with Seattle. They had a lead. Rodgers was hobbled. Had the Legion of Boom in Seattle. They had him on the ropes. They missed the onside kick recovery, which would have salted the game away. Give up 2 miracle touchdowns. Russell Wilson just throwing balloons in the air, and guys are catching it. And they go down by 3, but Rodgers on a hobbled leg still gets him down the field to kick the tying field goal as time expires to go to overtime, and then he never sees the ball again. So it's been the same thing every year. Get some defensive help for him. Well, they get defensive help for him. They have receivers. Davante Adams is a good receiver. He is a great receiver. He is a top 5 in the league receiver. Okay? They did not have Jordy Nelson or Randall Cobb this year. Okay? They felt good enough about going with Geronimo Allison, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Enemequius St. Brown. Felt good about that group, plus Jake Kumerow was coming in, and they had this free agent undrafted rookie, Alan Lazard, that they drafted that Rodgers really liked. Okay? But they built a defense for him. And they won on the first game. And the first thing Rodgers says, well, it looks like we got a defense now. And he was all smiles. He was all happy.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they weren't putting up 40 points a game, even though they had an elite running game, you got Aaron Jones averaging over 5 yards a carry. He had 19 touchdowns this year, which was tied for the league lead. The guy was a beast coming out of the backfield. You had Jimmy Graham as your tight end. That never worked out. They tried. They had a line, and they had a defense. But they didn't win. And now everyone wants to say, oh, you don't get Rodgers any weapons. He's had weapons. He's had weapons for a long time. Randall Cobb just got paid to go to Houston. Randall Cobb played well in Dallas just recently. Mm-hmm. He had Randall Cobb all that time. Mm-hmm. He had Jordy Nelson all those years. He had him with that and Davante Adams.
But do you still think that with all of that you just mentioned, and I don't disagree with you.
I think it's excuses.
You think it's excuses. Do you think the Packers have done enough for Aaron Rodgers all this time?
I do. He wanted offense. They got offense. They scored a shit ton of points. Then he's like, I need a defense. So we go out and we get a defense for him. We paid a lot of money in the offseason to get Adrian Amos and the Smith brothers, even though they're not brothers, but we still call them the Smith brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They grabbed those guys. They drafted a linebacker. They drafted another defensive lineman last year in the draft. They drafted a corner, a shutdown corner, who is a really solid corner in Alexander. They did the things they needed to do, and the defense improved. And the offense fell off a little bit because it was a new system.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodgers is used to flinging the ball around and running around, making plays, and just kind of going off the cuff, where LaFleur is like, no, you've got to run the offense. The offense is supposed to run this way, and you've got to run it this way. He doesn't trust the offense, so he favored two guys. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to have to start throwing to other people. And other people let him down except for Lazard. But everyone's looking at this and going, oh, man, if the Packers only had someone like an Antonio Brown who could stretch the field. No, that's not the case. This team was not a wide receiver away from going to the Super Bowl. That is a myth. That is a big-time myth. Okay. This offense is not built that way. This offense is built to run very similar to how John Elway's offense ran with the Broncos those last 2 years with Shanahan, how the 49ers run now. Jimmy Garoppolo is not chucking the ball 60 yards down the field.
Mm-hmm.
He is playing within the offense. They run the ball, and then they pass off the run. And that's what LaFleur is trying to build. So then when we get to the second round, and we're picking 62nd, which 11 receivers have been picked at that point,
mm-hmm.
You get to number 62, and you look at what's left. Is there anybody left in that draft, as far as wide receivers go, that is any better than what you have on the roster? The answer was no.
I can't say no because we actually traded down. The Jets did.
Yeah, and you got a guy I wanted.
And we still ended up with Denzel Mims, whom we would have drafted at 48 or whatever the hell number it was. Before then. So, but I can't say because I did not watch the rest of the draft, quite frankly.
But at
after
62,
the Mims pick. But 62,
we're at 62. Right, Mims was the last guy that I was hoping was going to fall because he was the last like high-rated second tier. When you got past the first five that are like these are game breakers, these are franchise possible cornerstones. Those five were gone in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Then you're talking about the next round. And the next round of guys were the guy that the Raiders drafted.
Mm-hmm.
There was Chase Claypool. There was Denzel Mims. There was the guy from Clemson that got drafted right away by the Bengals in the first draft of the second round.
Yeah, I don't remember his name, but I know who you're talking about.
T. Higgins. That was the guy.
Yeah.
So those guys are the next tier.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to be the solid number twos. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Those guys were gone too. So we get to number 62, and we've got a guy on the board that they have scouted,
mm-hmm.
who is very Derrick Henry-esque.
Okay.
And you see what Derrick Henry did.
Yes.
You see what the Packers want to do. They want to control the clock. They want to keep the defense fresh and off the field. Because what happened to the Packers is that Aaron Rodgers would come out, face a good defense, which is what happens with him typically. Even
mm-hmm.
when he had rosters, he does struggle against top defenses. A lot of quarterbacks do.
Yeah.
Okay? He would get 3 and out after the 49ers just ran a 17-play drive to score a touchdown. 3 plays later, defense is back on the field. They're grinding it back on him again. And the defense was shot. So Green Bay is trying to do the same thing, where they're going to get a ball control offense, where they've got Aaron Jones, who can go in the backfield and also line up in the slot.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Williams, who can also bruise, run hard downhill. And now you got this new kid who is a fucking load to tackle. He is a big, big kid. You're going to have him, but with speed, to be able to add to that, and you keep pounding away at teams, then the defenses have to look at it and go, all right, we might have to put an extra guy in there to, check for the run.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've got one-on-one coverages everywhere. And
all right.
Rodgers is going to go, here, I'm going to hand off. Nope, I'm going to pull it back. Now he's got options. The problem is that the run game wasn't as strong as LaFleur wanted it to be in his system. He didn't get the production out of it where he can control the game with that. So they still had to rely on Rodgers. And Rodgers would get frustrated because Adams was doing his job and he was starting to get doubles, even triples, and other guys were not getting open and not doing what they're supposed to. They're dropping the ball. So there was this perceived notion that Aaron doesn't have any weapons around him and he doesn't have anyone to throw to. But he does. So then the second argument came to, well, why didn't they draft any defensive players?
All right, you know what?
Defensive players,
and that's a great segue. Though right now, I do hate to, and I'm getting very into this conversation because you're hitting on some of the points that I'm hearing the talking heads at the mothership and
because it
Fox
sells
Sports
papers and
all
clicks.
That. And you're hitting on all of those points, and I want to touch up a little bit more on that, but I do need to cut to a commercial break really quickly. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll come back. We'll have you finish the Packers topic there, and then we can maybe chat a little bit about The Last Dance because I'm very, very into that series. I know a lot of people are. It's getting rave reviews. We'll talk about that a little more. Back with more of Brandon's soapbox in the Packers draft on the Listening Podcast, Videocast. Stick around, we'll be right back.
Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Ryan Wolf.
Hey, Mr. Perez.
From the Better Live Than Dead podcast. You can catch the Better Live Than Dead podcast on the Gear Radio Network, BetterLiveThanDead.com, and wherever you get your podcasts.
That's right.
With that being said, hey, we talk about sports, we talk about music, we talk about entertainment.
I make things really awkward sometimes.
That sounds about right.
Uh-huh.
With that being said, though, as you always know, we are Better Live Than Dead.
You're not.
We'll catch you sometime very soon.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Listen In video podcast. John Spino here. Brandon Garrell there. All right, Brandon, I don't remember exactly where the hell we left off.
I left off at the defense.
You left off at the defense. Okay.
Yeah.
So continue Packers defense.
They complained. That was the next complaint. Well, it's like, well, you didn't draft any wide receivers, but you also didn't help that defense that got gashed. And I'm like, well, yeah, but part of the reason they got gashed is because they were gassed. We kept it close early, but they ran out of gas, and that's when they started really getting run over, and the score got kind of out of hand. We have guys. We're hoping that Rashawn Gary, gets over that hump after the first year of not playing as much. He was a rookie, and he was behind Blake Martinez and the Smiths and stuff. But also, we have Oren Burks, who got hurt. He was supposed to be our starting linebacker. He got hurt in the first game last year and missed the rest of the season. And then we picked up Kirksey, who, if healthy, is an upgrade to the two linebackers that we lost. And that's saying a lot because, Martinez led us in tackles like 2 seasons in a row. The secondary is solid. The only one I worry about is Kevin King, but you know what? Maybe he'll be a little better, with another year under his belt. But we've got Alexander and Savage on the outsides. The safety position set with Amos. Like, they have a good team, but they've ran out of gas. So honestly, I think a lot of this is being overblown. Brett Favre's not helping by sticking his tiny dick in the
and that's you know what, that was another thing I was going to ask you about because I read that thing where he
Aaron's going to go another place. Well, maybe that worked for you because you were being a little bitch about everything. But maybe Aaron's going to be different, and he's going to be like, get a red ass about it.
But here's the big difference in that in those two scenarios. Brett Favre, I would say probably about a good year or two before Aaron Rodgers was drafted,
was waffling about, I think I'm going to retire.
I don't know if I'll be back. I don't know if I'll be back.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll be. So they kind of had to do what
he was getting back in my good graces, and now he's getting out of them again because he's being a shit stirrer right now.
Yeah, so that was the major difference, is that Aaron Rodgers has not once mentioned retirement. He's mentioned about playing until he's 40 or 41 or whatever, into his 40s.
Yeah, into his 40s.
Which seems to be,
3 years
now
away.
it seems to be the new norm.
It's
I think,
literally 2 years away from him being 40.
Right. So, but Brett Favre at that time was 34 or 35, and he was doing I don't know if I'm coming back. I don't know, whatever. And then he would come, and then the off season for the Packers would be in limbo, because they didn't know what the hell that was happening. And then Favre would come back, and it would be this miraculous thing. And then they finally got Rodgers, and then he really started doing that shit. And then, Mike McCarthy was just at wit's end with him and was like, you know what, we're going to go with Rodgers. And
not only that, like, he hung it up. Like, he retired, and then he decided to come back. And it's like, well,
we're still going.
We've already moved on,
because we've already moved on. You're going to the Jets. And
I think that Rodgers, everyone's talking about it. He reached out to Love right away, congratulated him on being picked, all that stuff, but everyone else has had opinions, and Rodgers hasn't said anything. I think what Rodgers is going to do is, I think he's going to use this as fuel, because that guy has run on fuel his entire career. Everything has been from when he got drafted. When he slipped, and he's just like, what do you think about the 49ers and not drafting you number one? He's like, you think they're, they're
going to regret not picking you.
Yeah. He's like,
he said, not as much as
they're going to be. Yeah, not as much as they're going to regret not picking me.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff always happens. And when they say Aaron Rodgers doesn't have it, or he can't do it this year, he goes and he shows them. Like, he runs on that fuel, even if it's like a perceived slight where it's like, okay, you're kind of stretching. He still takes it as a slight against him, and he goes out and kicks ass. I think he's going to do the same thing here, and I don't think he's going to shut him out like Favre shut out Rodgers. And Favre thinks that he's going to, and he's like, oh, it's not his job to train him. Okay, well, great, but Aaron Rodgers is a different guy than you. Like, Aaron Rodgers lived what he's going through right now with you, and you were a dick to him.
Exactly. If anybody knows what Jordan Love is going to be going through, what is already going through, it's Aaron Rodgers. So it would be very hypocritical, I feel, and if Aaron Rodgers were to Brett Favre Jordan Love, so to speak. It would be very hypocritical of Aaron Rodgers, and I think it would move Aaron Rodgers down a few pegs in terms of his standing as the bad man. And I don't think, for as much as I don't think Aaron Rodgers really cares what people think about him, I think to a degree he would care about that, because nobody wants to be labeled a hypocrite, and Aaron Rodgers would very much be one if he were to do the same thing to Jordan Love that Brett Favre did to him.
Yeah, I just don't see it happening, and I don't see them transitioning to Love for at least 2 to 3 years. Like,
well, they can't.
Probably 3 years.
Financially, they absolutely cannot. Financially,
well, unless they find a suitor. Like, they can find a suitor, and
if they
that money goes away.
If they can, yes. But I think it's $31 million in dead money. If they were to do it, 2021.
Right. So he's going to be here for 2 years.
So he's going to be there at the very least for 2 years. Really quickly, going back to the Packers picks here, and I'm going to name every single one of them one by one here. You don't have to. Just tell me what you feel at the very end of it. So round 2 was A.J. Dillon. Round 3, Josiah DeGara, tight end out of Cincinnati.
He's interesting.
Round 5, Kamal Martin. Round 6, they had 3 picks: John Runyon, Jake Hansen, Simon Stefanik.
Yeah, I like the Runyon pick.
And then 2 round 7s: Vernon Scott, the safety, and Jonathan Garvin, defensive end out of Miami. Brandon, are you, as a Packers fan, happy with this draft? Again, you're the most diehard Packers fan that I know, and Packers fan on Twitter is like, oh, this is terrible. What are they doing? So are you, as a Packers loyalist, happy with how this draft turned out?
I'm not happy. I am in a wait and see, because I honestly think that if this team is trying to convert to being a power running team, and the pass goes off of it, it's going to make Aaron Rodgers that much more dangerous. And this could end up being a really, really good draft for them. And then, you got to wait probably about 3 years before you know whether that Jordan Love pick, I mean, that could be an A+ pick. He has similar qualities to Mahomes that a lot of people are comparing his intangibles and the arm angles and the arm strength and the different ways that he can deliver the ball to Mahomes. Like, if they didn't pass on that Mahomes, like a lot of teams did, and they end up with a Mahomes type character, then that draft that everyone was rating an F is all of a sudden an A+, because you got a franchise quarterback in the first round, and all you had to give up was a 4th round pick to get it.
Exactly. And, the thing is, the Green Bay can say this. Not very many teams can.
Yeah.
For the past nearly 30 years,
right?
There's only been 2 franchise quarterbacks for the Green Bay Packers, like Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers.
And we should have more Super Bowls. I mean, Favre lost one.
Yes.
And Rodgers has been to 3 NFC Championship games that they've lost.
4, I thought.
Well,
that they lost.
3.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, and the first loss was the Seattle loss,
and
there was
which Fox aired.
Wasn't
today.
Rodgers?
Fox aired today, and I was like, and I sat there and I watched a little bit of it, and I was like,
nope.
No.
And then the next time they lost to Atlanta, but they were basically like taking kids from Kroger's and like making them wide receivers because everybody was hurt.
I remember
Adams was the only guy that wasn't hurt, but he was hurt, and like he was able to at least go. So they had nobody left when they got to that NFC Championship game. And then last year, the 49ers grinded them down. I mean, we were 13-3 last year. Even if they fall off, even if they fall off a bit, they're going to be 11-5, 10-6. They're still going to make the playoffs, especially with this new dumb format. They're still going to be a dangerous team. And they didn't really lose anybody. They lost very small pieces, but they've replaced every piece.
Okay.
And they've added some stuff to the pile. So, again, I think it's an overreaction. I think that everyone just gets so it's like a baseball where like chicks dig the long ball. Like, you got to have all those home run hitters in your lineup. But the teams like the San Francisco Giants had like no home run hitters. Like their top home run hitter is 20, and yet they win 3 out of 5 World Series. It's not always the flashiest team and the sexiest receivers. I mean, Tom Brady's never really had a wideout except for that 1 year with Randy Moss. He's had Julian Edelman, and everyone's like, "Oh, Julian Edelman's great." He was a fucking quarterback in college. He came out of the draft as a quarterback. And he converted to wide receiver. Yeah, Gronkowski, he's a tight end, but he's not a big home run threat. He can't run by the secondary.
He's not Jerry Rice. He's not Randy Moss. Hell, he's not Chris Carter.
He's not Julio Jones. He's not fucking
Antonio
DeAndre
Brown.
Hopkins. So those guys weren't there for Green Bay to pick. But, I mean, you look at the guys, I mean, even until this year, like, Drew Brees always has that one guy, and then he makes other guys better. Brett Favre never had elite receivers. We had Javon Walker. The one time he had...
There's a name out of the past. I haven't heard that name in a while.
That he had an elite receiver was Sterling Sharp.
Yeah.
And they didn't win anything with him.
No.
He broke his neck, and that was it. But, I mean, when they won the Super Bowl, he had fucking Andre Rison, Desmond Howard,
Don
Beebe, and you had Mark Chimura as your fucking tight end.
Oh, man, that's another name out of the past. I forgot about him.
The All-American Chewy.
I forgot about him.
He never really had the elite receivers, but
yeah, Dorsey Levens too, didn't they?
Yeah, they had Dorsey
but he was the kick
backfield.
returner.
No, kick returner was Howard. He wasn't Super Bowl
Howard.
MVP
That's right.
Right. Levens was in the backfield as a running back, but they had a balanced team. When Green Bay won the Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, they had a balanced team. Their defense was really solid, and their offense was really solid. Jordy Nelson was new. He was young, and he was emerging. You had Greg Jennings was your elite number 1 receiver.
The big old Dougie smile.
Yeah. And he had Donald Driver, who was at the back end of his career. I mean, he retired after that. He got hurt in the fucking game, and he didn't get to finish it. But the defense...
Wasn't that Woodson? I thought that was Charles Woodson.
Woodson got hurt, too.
He got hurt.
They both... Donald Driver got hurt before Woodson did.
Okay. I don't remember.
Woodson made it through to the first half, and then he couldn't come out in the second half.
I was very drunk that game.
Yeah.
Gianna was a baby.
I was too nervous to drink.
I drank for you. Don't worry.
Yeah, I appreciate you.
Those bee limes hit me like, oh man, poor man's beer. I say this as I'm sipping on a Miller Lite here.
Yeah. So I mean, that was the team that won a championship. That was their most balanced team, and yet ever since then they've been heavy on one or the other side. Mm-hmm. And this, I think, is the closest they've gotten to a balanced team. Mm-hmm. And when I look at the relationship that LaFleur is coming in and is kind of saying, like, putting the halt on it and saying, hey, you can play the Aaron Rodgers show as long as it's within the system. Mm-hmm. We respect the system. And that's exactly what McCarthy did when he came in and took over with Favre. Favre was just running all over the place, throwing the ball, and they were going 4-12. McCarthy comes into play, and then all of a sudden, Brett, play within the system. Play within the system. Play with the plays that are on there. Make adjustments when necessary, but make your reads, make the plays. All of a sudden, Favre's career is resurrected again. Mm-hmm. And they go to the NFC Championship game. So I see the same similarity here with LaFleur, because after a while, Rodgers got tired of hearing McCarthy in his ear, and he's just like, I'm just fucking do my own shit here. I have fucking allergies right now. Oh. So, you know, he's going to rein Rodgers in and say, listen, you can still be fucking Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. And we still want you to make those plays. But we want to make the plays, and we want to be balanced, and we want to have an attack, and we want to have a plan. Mm-hmm. And you got to stick with that plan. And I think for the most part, he did that last year. And yeah, it was an adjustment, but Aaron Rodgers had a pretty damn good season last year. Even though it was a down number-wise, they're 13-3.
They were 13.
Would you rather have Rodgers throwing 45 touchdowns against 3 interceptions and then them finish 9-7? Or would you rather be 13-3 and go to the NFC Championship game and your numbers aren't as great?
Well, all that will remain to be seen, and I'm looking forward to dealing with this. I know I mentioned to you off air before we began the podcast. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about The Last Dance. I think we're going to save that. We'll save that for next week, because we'll have 2 more episodes to actually talk about as well on there. But really quickly,
I think we should do a Last Dance episode when it finishes.
Absolutely. But we can still talk a little bit about it to get content in. But yeah, absolutely, a Last Dance recap after the whole series finishes. I am absolutely for. But real quick, just a quick 30, 60 seconds. Your thoughts on that so far?
The show.
The show.
It's outstanding.
It's brilliant.
It's really well done, and I wanted to kick Ken Burns in his little tiny nutsack when he came out today, and he was like bashing the fucking series because Michael Jordan had control over it too much, and it's not good journalism. I'm like, fuck off, Ken Burns.
Whatever.
The Last Dance would have been a fucking 30-episode bore fest with you talking over it. There's no fucking narrator. This is just the people that were in it and footage.
And for those,
there's no bullshit.
And for those that are watching, obviously listening, you're not going to see it. But for those watching, the reason why I chose Miller Lite as the drink of choice for me for today was because of Dennis Rodman.
Dennis Rodman,
and the man's a legend, and it was even more cemented. I'm dipping into this. I don't want to get, but it really has cemented. It really has cemented this team as the team of teams, and I'm looking forward to this weekend to see when it started becoming a cultural phenomenon. When they start talking about how the Bulls and those teams were really being targeted towards a generation, a cultural generation. So it's gonna be really good to see. But with that, we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna put a bow and wrap it, as Brian Wolf would say. We're gonna put a bow and wrap up this podcast here. Thanks everybody for tuning in, for watching us, for listening to, well, quite frankly, Brandon talk for the last, for the last half hour, 41 minutes.
I got on that Packers. It's
about the Packers.
A big topic. It's like it kind of became like the talk of the draft.
It did. It really did. It's all
people want to talk about and write about.
It's all I've been hearing about as I'm working and I'm listening to shows like Get Up and First Take, which I can't stand watching First Take. But I will. I mean, Molly, I'll watch, but whatever. But aside from that, like, that's all they've been talking about. But I'm happy that you are able to go on there as a diehard Packers fan and plead your case for why all of the MSM for sports media is overreacting about this. But
I think it is.
Let us. We will convene sometime very, very soon to talk The Last Dance. Definitely. And among other things that will develop, who knows what will develop with the Packers or with whatever between now and then. But this was a great podcast. Again, thank you all. If you all would like, you don't have to do this, but certainly an easy way to support us besides the PayPal button over on GearNetwork.com. Our Patreon page, patreon.com/GearNetwork. We throw everything up there commercial free, and there are some added extras on there. Perhaps maybe some added extras from this very podcast here. You never know. But it's all on there. Easy breezy. A way to support us as little as $2 a month over on Patreon. Brandon, we will be privately talking tomorrow on the Gear Network Happy Hour. But until then, good day to you, sir.
Good day to you as well.
So long, everybody. Good night now. Flavor Flav, do your thing, please.
Yeah, boy!
Hang on, one more thing before you go. Remember, listen to our sponsors following this podcast, as that does help this podcast and this network out in a way that we appreciate very, very much. So if you could just ride it out 30 to 60 more seconds after this podcast is over, listen to those commercials, it would be doing us a very, very big solid. And again, we thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Gear Radio Network. For more, log on to GearNetwork.com.